Hi, my name is James. Welcome to At Wisdom Waves. As my colleague Sandra promised you in the teaser trailer, we promised you earlier to publish a series to educate people around the world on the techniques and tools that experts resorт to during times of inflation. Uncontrolled inflation rates can cause severe consequences to people as they can't adapt to violent changes in prices in basic material and services around them while their income remains the same. Companies are driven during inflation to release employees in order to cut costs and retain operational budgets to survive. Inflation can cause higher rates of unemployment and poverty and possibly lead to famine. In Venezuela, we saw citizens carrying bags filled with cash so that they can buy basic food. In Lebanon, we saw people storming the streets attacking bank ATMs in protests against the country's monetary policy while food prices registered a staggering increase of 4,000%. In Nigeria, we saw acts of violence against bankers, branches and petrol stations while currency was disappearing from the hands of the people. We saw long lines of cars waiting to refuel in petrol stations in Europe and the UK due to inflation. In other ways, inflation is the monster of monsters and can destabilize communities, governments, and individuals in many ways and forms. The Egyptian pound dropped in value from £18 per US dollar to over £37 because of inflation. We pledge in this series to educate and enlighten you on the causes, influences, and consequences of inflation and to arm you with the tools and techniques that would support you to survive this storm. Keep in mind that most economic studies published after the era of COVID-19 have forecasted negative growth patterns for world economy, and have pressed panic alarm against a violent storm coming called inflation. But, to begin, what is inflation exactly? How does it occur? How does it affect you while you're watching this video right now? And let's not forget, did you subscribe already? We would highly appreciate your support to let us grow and reach more people to educate and share knowledge. Beware, for inflation spares no one. Individuals find themselves caught in its financial grip, as hard-earned money loses its potency. The dream of maintaining a comfortable lifestyle becomes a daunting challenge, as prices soar and savings dwindle. As for companies, they battle against rising costs, clutching their profit margins with fierce determination. Yet, in this chaotic dance, opportunities for innovation and adaptation arise. Governments, the guardians of stability, are tasked with taming this beast, walking the tightrope between growth and inflation control, seeking harmony amidst economic storms. Knowledge is power, dear viewers. Armed with an understanding of inflation's intricacies, individuals can make informed financial choices, shield their savings, and explore avenues of growth. Companies, quick-witted and nimble, can devise strategies to stay afloat in turbulent times, adapting their pricing and planning with finesse. Governments, the architects of stability, wield the tools of monetary and fiscal policy, striving to strike a balance that protects their citizens' welfare and fosters a thriving economy. So, what is inflation? Inflation is an economic phenomenon that affects countries worldwide, shaping the lives of individuals, companies, and governments. It occurs when there is a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services over time. Understanding the causes and consequences of inflation is essential for navigating the economic landscape and making informed financial decisions. It occurs when there is a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services over time. When governments and central banks fail to maintain the balance between the available mass of banknote bills in the market, offer, and the value that weighs it in their strategic reserves, demand. Countries usually purchase raw material from other countries using US dollars, which was established as a global currency for international trades instead of gold after the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1958. Since then, governments across the world put into place policies to maintain the price of national currencies against the US dollars by balancing domestic production and foreign purchases, in addition to local exchange rates. You need to understand that regular inflation rates occur every year. Think of that house that used to cost around $35,000 30 years ago and now costs over $150,000 to buy. Although the house remains the same, the value of the US dollar changed over 30 years because of the influence of inflation. The rise in needs to support the American economy drove the Federal Reserve over years to print and deploy trillions-dollar notes into international markets, which resembles the offer in this case, causing it to lose value with time. That is natural occurring inflation. However, When countries lose control over the devaluation prices by failing to produce a national income that balances the country's expenditure to balance the annual budget, merchants and local buyers resolve to replace the national currency between their hands into US dollars, eventually flooding the offer rates of local currency and causing it to lose value. This mostly occurs with merchants and companies that trade with petroleum-based products like gasoline and diesel or imported brands such as construction material. This initiates a ripple effect as foreign investors begin to fear for their savings and attempt to transfer their funds or profits to safer locations outside these countries. This leads to suspension of projects and closure of companies. You can notice that when severe inflation storms hit a country, international franchises are the first usual passengers to jump off the ship. The reason they do that is that once local currencies begin to lose value, franchises will sell their products in prices much lower in value than what they were purchased with. Generally, countries would resolve to measures to combat high inflation rates like increasing GDPs in order to increase the US dollar income and balance the value of the monetary mass in local currency with that of its value in US dollars. This requires producing revised monetary and fiscal policies that address public expenditure. Naturally, this involves reduction of spending on public services to citizens, which reflects in retreated quality of services. Other countries resort to more authoritative measures like controlling prices in public and private sectors, in addition to imposing strict policies on currency exchange processes. On the other hand, governments attempt to control inflation by increasing the dollar flow into the local market from outside. Through economic reforms and enforcing anti-corruption policies, and directing investments towards the country's infrastructure, governments plan to regain the trust of foreign investors who seek stable and financially safe environment to invest. Additional investments imply higher cash flow. Such reforms to the infrastructure would require governments to lend money from other countries or from the International Monetary Fund, who in turn places a set of demands and terms upon governments that begin with releasing the limits and controls on currency rates. This usually plunges currency rates into devaluation in a steam pattern until the currency reaches its realistic value against the US dollar. However, as rates go down, prices soar up high at similar speeds. Imagine waking up to find that your life savings are worth today half of their price yesterday. Or imagine that your pension, which you have been looking up to over the past years, is suddenly worth 1/3 of its value. Or imagine standing in a long line to fill up your car with gasoline, only to find out later on that the price has tripled since yesterday. Imagine arriving to work to receive a note in the morning that your services in the company are no longer required because of the new financial policy of the company. And after that, you would heavily-hearted go to the grocery store to procure your family needs and discover that prices have tripled since yesterday. These nightmares are actual scenarios to what can happen during sudden inflation outbreaks. In Lebanon, for example, the devaluation of the national currency began in late 2019 after maintaining a fixed ratio for the Lebanese lira of 1,500 per $1 since 1994. By the beginning of 2023, the dollar was equivalent to 110,000 liras. All while a parallel market or black market, as locals call it, tend to control the rates of demand and offer. You can imagine that the price of a can of baby milk, which used to cost around 21,000 liras, spiked up to reach 2 million liras today. All while wages have not recovered yet. Lebanon's inflation explosion has been classified among the worst financial disasters in recorded human history. Eventually, as governmental services went downwards, the first class to suffer from the consequences of this drop were those who work in the public sector. After being used to receive what was worth $1,000 as monthly income in form of salary or pension, the income of this class devaluated to reach around $75 in value. Companies were not able to retain employees who started seeking work opportunities outside the countries, while the average salary in the country became less than $150 in value. People in Lebanon suffered every day since 2020 trying to balance their lowered income with their basic needs like fuel, electricity, water, groceries, education, and medical services. The country, which was known once as the Switzerland of the East, resides today under heavy social and economic burdens with increased rates of unemployment, crime rates, poverty, illiteracy, and immigration. All of this is because of inflation. Lebanon is one among 15 countries that suffer from the negative consequences of inflation today. It remains, however, one of the strongest examples on the monstrosity of inflation. Yet, Despite all of these horrors, inflation carries along new opportunities that can turn you into a wealthy person if you knew how to seize them correctly. In the next episode of this series, my colleague Sandra will teach you what to do when a scenario like this appears distant between the clouds, and prepare you to ride the wave and reach the shore not only with minimal damage, but with added wealth. If you found this video useful to you, please share it with your friends so that they can learn as well. And while you're at it, we appreciate if you hit that subscribe button.